the West and the East, I suppose, as I'm joined by the lovely Eleanor again.
Hello, everyone.
And I'll ask you, Eleanor, how are you?
I had been preparing for my interview for my teaching certification. It was very successful, by the way.
Well, that's good.
So I have much free time now. That's why I'm here.
Well, that's good. All right. So, and ironically, I'm going back in for my certification soon.
What?
Well, I'm certified in English. I need to be certified in French.
Okay.
It's just, one kind of helps the other to an extent, as there's more job opportunities in French these days than English. So it's back to school. All right. Now, last time we left off, Baron and Luthien had awakened Thingol from his catatonic state. And Baron and Luthien then had probably almost one of the only happily ever afters in The Lord of the Rings. And I'll just comment that it's interesting that in his Fairy Stories essay, Tolkien stresses a fairy story must have a happily ever after, but he gave so few of them. Where he said, if you don't give these, you're not a good author. You're not doing it right. But he didn't do it all that often, so that it's kind of one of the things I'm finding hilarious on this read through of the Silmarillion. All right. So as we find out on page 178 of the edition I have, I don't know what page it is in your edition, we find out that Maethros, who's the son of Feanor, ended up now thinking that since Baron and Luthien could penetrate Angband and swipe a Silmaril, surely all the armies of Middle-earth could as well. What he doesn't count on is that Morgoth, how do I put it? He's what Dan calls a learning villain. Like something happens to him and he learns from it. And he goes, oh, that's how you got. I'm going to keep that in mind next time. So he learned from Fingolfin, then he learned from Baron and Luthien, and now he's tightened up his defenses and he's prepared for what's to come. And so the problem is that we have characters who think they can take him now, and you can't blame them. It's the most natural assumption to make that he's not indomitable, that they can conquer him. But it's a big mistake. And the problem is that Maethros, at this point, I think is something of an idealist in that he thinks, he forges what is the first real serious alliance of men and elves, and even dwarves.
And dwarves, yeah.
He essentially gets it into his head, well, individually we'll be beaten. Divided we stand, united we stand. Divided we fall, united we stand. We can, if we just join together, come on, none of us actually want Morgoth to win. Like, if we all join together, we're going to win this. The problem is, when you open your banner to everyone, you open your banner to no one. And it's noble of him to invite the elves, men, and dwarves in all together. But the problem is, for one thing, Celegorm and Curufin screwed things up as they offended Doriath. And, Doriath could have helped a lot. Arguably, they could have turned the tide, but they didn't show up. And you also have Morgoth, who slips in a few humans in there because he's not stupid. He's got his own corrupted humans. And the elves aren't making any distinction between these various races of men. I would argue to an extent it's, how do I put it? Um, how to describe it? It's kind of like how I'll use a World War One reference. At the end of World War One, Japan came into the talks at Versailles very naive, thinking, well, everybody's tired from war, and we're very friendly with the French and the British. They love us, like. And Japan said, now, if Germany's on its back, you can't mistreat it. Like, we got to extend noblesse oblige. We got to extend mercy. And they said, how about we mediate? We're the neutral party. Like, we've not been affected by Germany. We're good friends with France and Britain. Like, you can trust us to be the neutral party. But America said, no, like, we will not be present. We will not tolerate Japan being in the room. They're not allowed in the room. Japan went in thinking everybody was going to be friends with each other and everybody was going to be nice. No. And the problem is Britain was beholden to America. And so Britain said, yeah, you know what? We're going to break the friendship. Get out. Now, the problem is this is where they assumed every European power and whatnot would be the same and would think the same way. Because, like, the way France thinks is more similar to how Japan thinks to an extent. Oh, I've beaten my enemy. I have to show mercy unless they've really offended me. But the problem is Japan could have persuaded everyone, but not everyone was thinking like that. So that's the problem. Mayfrose is thinking all humans think the same way.
Or elves.
Yeah, or
Or
else.
elves and men.
Yeah, yeah. So this isn't that Maythros is being evil. It's that, because like I've seen people say, well, he's the villain. No, it's more complicated than that. Maythros is operating under very flawed logic. Like, to an extent, like, one could even argue, like China in the 1840s operated with the logic. Well, the French came in, they're friendly with us. Then the British come in, and very different cultures. And not that I'm attacking the British, I love them, but you can't make these assumptions about people. Like, I think it's the Bulgarians fought, oh, the Mongols are coming. The Mongols don't like the Muslims. They must be our friend. Oh my gosh, they're slaughtering us. What are we doing? Like the Bulgarians and the Polish then realized, oh, Mongols aren't our friends. Genghis Khan is not here to liberate us. Oops. So, you can't paint with a broad brush because, you'll always be shocked. And Maythros assumes everybody's as good as him. And this isn't, this isn't narcissism. This is more naivete, idealism. He's like he's like Goku. He's like shonen hero. He's like, oh, well, I'll just make friends with everyone. No, not in this story, buddy. And I wonder if it's a mistake Fingolfin would have made. I don't think it is. Fingolfin just seemed wiser to me. Feanor probably would have made an enemy of everyone. Maythros tries the opposite approach of Daddy. And I find this one of the most fascinating moments because the last alliance is arguably a continuation of this alliance. Like, this is the first alliance. And
it's a callback, right? It's a callback.
Yeah. I just love this one.
Yes, I love it too because you can find a lot of callbacks in the whole, legendarium. So it's really fascinating to see the history of Middle Earth repeat itself.
Well, it's also that Tolkien, we have to bear in mind, he looked at history as and I've begun to think of it in the same way. I didn't used to, but it's cyclical. That is to say, we repeat the patterns of the past. And even if we know history, we will still repeat it.
Yeah.
Spengler and Evola, two very advanced philosophers of the early 20th century, wrote a great deal about this. We can't change. We are going to repeat the same patterns no matter what. So like right now we are in a period which is probably like the for some parts of the world, probably more like the end stage of the Roman Empire. So we have to go down that road. We have to, or we might be like at the beginning of a Sung period or something. I would compare like a lot of modern China to like either the probably the Sung period or Song period. It's repeating patterns. Not that I think there's any Mongols around, so that shoots that idea a little. But it's one of those very fascinating ideas. And Tolkien subscribed to these ideas. He was aware of them because he was very well read. And so he puts in at the beginning of the, um, you have the Union of Maethros, and then you have the Last Alliance. They're echoes of each other. They circle around each other. But the difference is, I would argue, the Last Alliance achieved more because it ultimately won,
Yeah.
whereas Maethros lost totally and completely. So it's a dark shadow of the Last Alliance. Um, Now, of course, we have Thingol, who, uh, you know, uh, didn't really feel happy with what Kelagorm and Kurufin did. And
Mm-hmm.
every day he looked upon the Silmaril, like the more he was filled with desire for it and to keep it. So the thing is, the communication between him and Maethros breaks down. Thank you, Kelagorm, Kurufin. That's your fault. Um, Actually, if Maethros had publicly executed them and sent their heads to Doriath, it probably would have won him a lot of favor.
Yeah.
But you can't do that because those are your brothers. So he's kind of trapped. Um, and of course, you have um, sorry, I love this race. You have the first appearance of the dwarves, like in a serious manner. You've got the Nalgrim who show up in armed force and great store of weapons.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And yeah,
Arms and grease of weapons.
yeah,
The smith is of, how do I
Nogrod and
pronounce
Belagost.
this?
Nogrod and Belagost.
Okay. Were busy in those days. Okay. And
Yeah,
gathered together
yeah,
all and his brothers and all people who would follow them.
yep. And the men of Thor and Ulfang were marshaled. Now, uh, you have, of course, um, men of the House of Hador end up preparing for war. We then get basically a muster of the men. We've got the people of Haleth, um, and we have, uh, well, like we're going to find out Gondolin's going to answer the call, uh,
Yes.
which is incredibly important and is one of the few good decisions Turgon ends up making. I say one
Mm-hmm.
of the few good decisions because he's inherently allergic to sound policy. Now, we also find out that um, Hurin offers really good counsel. And his advice, and I'd forgotten this when I read this part, is that how wise he was. Because I tend to forget that he tries to counsel, um, a more cautious approach. And this is something that um, I think gets forgotten by a lot of people. How Hurin is very wise and careful.
Yeah.
He's not the hothead his son or his wife are.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if I had to make any assessment, I'd say his daughter takes more after him in how uh, she seems at, to be a little more careful than her mom.
Mm-hmm.
Ruby to the house of uh, Hurin for having, his son take after his mother. Um, and of course, we get on, the edition I have, this great scene when the Gondolindrim show up, 10,000 strong. Oh man,
Yeah.
I love that part. And he shouts aloud, "Utulien ore, aya andalye, ah tanatari utulien aure. The day has come. Behold, people of the Eldar and fathers of men, the day has come." Oh, I lost Eleanor. Oh no, I lost her. Well, what am I to do? Yeah, so now I'm going by notes here. I don't have many on this chapter because it's one of those things where I, there's not as much stuff that happens here. And it's one of those um, things which, like it's just one battle. Normally I have pages and pages of these for these things. Eleanor's back. Good.
Sorry, maybe my internet is off. Was off.
Yeah. It's okay. It's about to rain over here.
Okay, continue.
All right. Well, utulianare, aya andalie, atanatari utulianare. The day has come. Behold, people of the Eldar and fathers of men. The day has come, is what apparently Turgon shouts.
Yeah.
And you have the great echo that passes. Ata ilome. The night is passing. Little do they realize the real night is upon them. Or
Yeah.
arguably, this is the passing of autumn and they're entering into winter, the winter of their discontent, to quote Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Um, and it's then that, of course, Hurin offers counsel and says, let's be careful here. Um, we shouldn't assail the enemy we shouldn't charge. We should beware of the guile of Morgoth, as he calls it. And they should wait and let the orcs break themselves in assault upon the hills. So the thing is, in military combat, like everyone's seen those really bad Hollywood movies where the two armies start charging each other. This is actually not very good military strategy. You're breaking formation. And the idea is that you're supposed to wait for the enemy to charge towards you to tire themselves out, because that takes a lot of energy. You'll be winded and tired, and you're then to charge right as they slow a little. They go, oh my gosh, I'm tired. You then smash into them with your cavalry and start tearing them apart. This is the general idea of traditional military combat. Unless you're Napoleon, who could kind of, well, he would use cannon to just scatter his enemies. They'd keep charging, and then he'd then release and charge. But he'd charge in divisions. Each division would be able to react on its own in brilliant fashion. But this was not an original idea. This was derived from Charlemagne and from the Romans before him. And in Asia, China had kind of approached this under, I think the most notable early example might be the Three Kingdoms period. For Korea, it'd be primarily the Imjin Wars that would see them apply this sort of thinking. Yeah. Japan applied it as far back as the Genpei Wars, which were a disaster for them because they just slaughtered their menfolk to an obscene degree. But the thing is, the elves, people don't listen to Hurin. And the thing is, you have Morgoth, who comes up with a brilliant strategy. He whips out Gelmir, son of Gwilyn, who's a lord of Nargothrond, and they captured him in the Battle of Sudden Flame. Now, they had blinded him because they're evil, and they proceed to pull him out, then chop off his hands and feet, and then
Yeah.
they behead him. With this being one of the darkest moments in the Silmarillion.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, Eleanor, but I remember just staring at the page going, wow, did that just happen?
It's more brutal than the Lord of the Rings.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's brutal in a way that you kind of just stare and go,
And
like, I have to,
maybe it's about maybe it's that the wartime experiences Tolkien had
mm,
um
yeah.
make him make him has a great impact on his writing.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. It's the sort of act that you do see occasionally in war.
Yeah.
And it's something that is meant to also intimidate or infuriate the enemy. And uh, we know from a lot of historic records, this sort of thing did happen quite often. And Tolkien experienced this sort of brutality. But um, like the interesting thing I think is that what's so shocking about it is that it comes out of nowhere. And the thing is, like if you look at if you compare it to Game of Thrones, George R. R. Martin revels in this sort of thing. There's a sort of sexual depravity, a sexual joy he or delight he takes in these sort of acts in his stories. But it undermines it. It cheapens it because you're left going, well, I expect it. You're a pervert. I know you're going to do this. Whereas with Tolkien, there's no joy in it. So it's just brutally done like that. And you're shocked because Tolkien, at his core is good. He's a good man and he doesn't like this stuff. So, he shows it. The difference is postmodernism, where people in nihilism and depravity and degeneracy versus someone who's wholesome and good and true. He's showing this as this is what happens in war. This is horrible.
Mm-hmm.
And, the devil does this. And this is well, I say the devil, but that's what Morgoth is. He's a devil. And
Mm-hmm.
this is what Tolkien is showing. So that's where I think that this act is more shocking here. Just like Boromir's death is very shocking. Um it's the sort of thing that like you go, wow, did that just happen? It's like, I don't know, the first movie I ever saw as a kid was Lion King. So when Mufasa dies, I remember being a kid and going, oh my gosh, what just happened to him? And like you're shocked because you don't expect that. But the thing is, there's a lot of death in Disney. There's lots of it.
Yeah.
But the reason we still love those old Disney cartoons is because um they don't how do I put it, they don't revel in it. you know uh well, there's that great line in Princess Mononoke, where the main character is cursed and he says, look at me, I'm cursed, I'm being eaten alive by my curse. This is what hatred and anger does to you all. That's the sort of thing that Tolkien's teaching. This is what hate and anger
Mm-hmm.
does.
Mm-hmm.
And Gwyndor of Nargothrond, the brother of Gelmir, of course, who will be important, of course. Gwyndor is going to be very important later.
Yeah.
He ends up reacting to seeing his brother slaughtered and tortured in front of him in the way I think, I don't know if you have any brothers or sisters, but I have
Mm-hmm.
some. And if this happened to them, I'd probably fly into a rage and say, all right, I'm charged.
Yeah.
I don't care. I'm going down there. That person will die no matter what. And um,
It's
Gwyndor,
understandable, right?
yeah, he
Mm-hmm.
charges, but this is not wise. This is
Mm-hmm.
not this is not sound tactics or stratagem. He
Yeah.
charges in a rage. And Fingon, this is where I think the mistake is more on Fingon. Gwyndor acting this way, we should praise. But Fingon acting this way, we should criticize. And the reason I say that is that Gwyndor is being a pious filial brother. This is his family. Like, if it happened to your mom or dad, you'd be hurt and angry.
Mm-hmm.
That is the righteous way to comport oneself. We also see that in, I believe, that movie you've shown me, Neja. um, but we should look at righteous anger in a positive light. Fingon lets his vassal make the decision for him. And I like Fingon. He's a great hero of the first stage, but he's also a bad leader.
Mm-hmm.
And he's led by Mayfros, he's led by Gwyndor. Now, when Gwyndor basically says, I'm charging, screw it,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going down there. Fingon should have said, somebody stop him, not yet.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hold him down if you have to. We're going to
Yeah.
wait, get him out. They're trying to lure us into a trap. But instead, he puts his white helm on, sounds his trumpet, and the whole host of Heathlum leaps down into the trap. This.
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah.
I remember, in the first Kingslaying, and Fingon was the one who charged into the Teleria as well. So it this story here reminded me that,
Yeah.
because Fingon, since like he was a good guy, but he was easy to anger and to act.
Mm, yeah. In a way, I wonder if there's an echo between him and Feanor, in that he is Fingolfin's Feanor.
I don't know.
Yeah. What I
That's a
mean
very
is,
good question. Uh-huh.
like, like Feanor is the impulsive, hot-headed eldest son um, of his father, Finwë, and maybe Fingon is the impulsive, hot-headed son of Fingolfin in the same way. And
Yeah, but you know what? The Arathel was very hot-headed as well.
sure,
But
yeah,
I think that Fiona was hot-headed for hatred, but Fingon was hot-headed for love, because
yeah,
all he did was out
was
of
out of love.
his care for his kindred.
Yeah, I think we do need to look at these as opposite mirrors of each other. On the other hand, Fingon does lead his father down a wrong. No, he does mislead him, as seen with the incident with the Teleri at Alqualonde, just as Feanor misleads Finwë. But the difference is, as you said, one it's out of love, the other out of hatred. And this is where we see that Fingon is not a good king.
Yeah,
He's a good man.
yeah, he
And
made mistakes.
yeah,
Yeah,
but I yeah, like I judge him on this battle. I put the blame on him, but I don't do it out of dislike of the character. I do it because it's a fact that's his fault. But
yeah, yeah.
he is a good character. He is wise and good. Um, he, but of course, they do push far. Like Gwyndor, in particular, makes it all the way to the gates. At which point, now apparently Morgoth trembles upon his throne as they made it as far as Fingolfin. But the difference is Fingolfin managed to challenge Morgoth himself, whereas Gwyndor's company are slaughtered and Gwyndor is captured to be broken in the same way his brother was, except minus the hand and foot chopping and blinding.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so he he kind of suffers as his brother did, and we later see how um, Gwyndor is a badass. He's a remarkable captain. And one of the major problems, one of the major losses here is that they actually got him captured. And
Yeah.
yeah, I know it's his own decision, but he's in a rage and he's
Mm-hmm.
grieving, so we can't judge too much there. And of course, Fingon and Maethros do what they can to rally their forces. And um, but the thing is, the trouble is the elves wanted the gates open, they get the gates open. And uh, out comes all the what is it? He looses the Morgoth loosed his last strength, and Angband was emptied, and out comes the wolves, the wolf riders, the Balrogs, the dragons, in particular
Mm-hmm.
Glaurung,
Mm-hmm.
and um, he unleashes everything. And we have to bear in mind, just one Balrog was able to kill Gandalf, the Grey.
Mm-hmm.
This is an army of them.
Why? Why is this so funny? Yeah.
It's it's funny in that, oh boy, they are so out of their league here. But somehow they do really well. Um, and what I really like is that Glaurung, who's pretty much the chief captain of this army,
Mm-hmm.
or at least a portion of it, strikes down Azaghal, the Lord of Belagost, and Azaghal then drives a knife into his belly,
Yeah.
and this is obviously going to create a bit of a weak point in him. And this is supposed to be a prelude to what comes later of Turin to Rambar. Um, it seems that Glaurung never learnt his lesson. Um, but you
Mm.
know what they say, you can't teach an old dragon new tricks. Um, but Fingon and Turgon, well, actually, first off, the dwarves proceed to chase away Glaurung. And, well, the dwarves then basically take up the body of their king and bear it away, singing a great dirge, as though it were a funeral pomp. And while I think that they could have helped some, but I think I have to give it to the dwarves in that they realized, yeah, this isn't going well. This was not the plan for us to lose this badly. But they did their part. They have to retreat. They are the first to realize the battle's a disaster and they retreat. But they did what no one else did in this battle. They claimed glory. They did the best. They chased off Glaurung. So
Mm.
they get a lot of points for that. Um, and of course, just to go back a little earlier, I forgot to mention that Maglor slays Uldor the Accursed,
Mm-hmm.
um, who is I believe, an Easterling. Now, the Easterlings
Yes.
had been welcomed into the army, and they then proceed to betray
Yeah.
uh, Maethros' forces. And if I may, this is a battle which is very interesting because um, Tolkien was an interesting historian in that he primarily knew European history and, of course, English history. And yet, this part of the battle reminds me more of Sekigahara from, I don't know if you know the battle from Japan.
Okay.
Basically, you had a Western and Eastern force, and the West had planned for a pincer attack with, a Eastern daimyo, an Eastern warlord, to attack the enemy from behind, while they would
Mm-hmm.
lead the greater part of their forces forward towards the east. And the two armies met at Sekigahara in those fields, which I've actually seen in passing. They're beautiful, but very solemn fields. But the thing is, the Tokugawa army from the east ended up sending out a small force to delay the eastern force that was meant to pincer them, and the military commander in question was an idiot. So he, of course, got bogged down in these little skirmishes with these scouting forces, and then realized, "Oops, missed my opportunity. I guess I better go beg for
Mm-hmm.
mercy." But the thing is, the Western forces then suffered a betrayal as they went to clash with the Eastern forces of Tokugawa. One of the wings, led by a guy called Kobayakawa, who had a bad rep, proceeded to turn around and smash into the neighboring wing, the central
Mm-hmm.
wing of the army. And this sent the whole thing rolling back like a carpet, just as the Tokugawa forces charged. So, there's this clash. But the way it's described in the history books is exactly like this, where, you've got the Easterlings that suddenly turn, smash into the main army, and you have the main army that's kind of surprised and stunned and going, "Wait,
Mhm.
what?" And they're sent rolling back.
Yeah.
So the battle just has a lot of similarities there, but it's one of those battles where everything that could go wrong did go wrong, and the sons of well, um, well, the Easterlings are who were a trap planted by Morgoth, um, end up betraying, and of course, there's the sons of Bor who slay Ulfast and Ulwarf, um, ere they themselves were slain, and of course, you have, but they serve their purpose. They drive back Maethros's main force,
Mhm.
and you
Mhm.
have Gothmog in the meantime who leads a group against Fingon. So while the dwarves are basically being routed, like they're forced to retreat, the
Mhm.
Feanorians are being slaughtered. Well, not slaughtered, but their armies are being slaughtered and they're forced
Mhm.
back. You've got Fingon who's then ambushed. And of course, Fingon tries to. Um, he fights bravely against Gothmog until someone else comes behind him and
Mhm.
casts a thong of fire about him. And at which point, Gothmog, apparently armed not with a whip but an axe, no wait, a black axe,
Mhm.
um, and a white flame spraying up from the yeah.
Mhm.
Basically, he
Yeah.
smashes his skull open, drops him, and then they proceed to just keep beating him with their maces, which is a horrible way to go.
It's too graphic.
Yeah, it's like they knock him down. All right, I think he's down, guys. No, no, no. He just twitched. Okay. No, wait. There's still like a few limbs left. No, let's keep smashing them. Oh wait, was that his main torso? No, it's gone. Okay. Well, there's not a skull left. There's not brains left. There's not body left. Wait, there's a finger. Like
Oh
that's
my
how it
god.
seems. Like it says, "Thus fell the High King of the Noldor, and they beat him into the dust with their maces, and his banner, blue and silver, they trod into the mire of his blood."
Mm. Yes, it's
Which,
too detailed. It's
yeah,
very detailed.
yeah. I don't know about you, but when I first read this, and I still get this image, no, I imagine them beating on him, and like the camera panning to his standard
Mm-hmm.
or his banner, and it being like his blood flowing over it. That's how.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I,
very
I
cool.
think I think if you film this thing, if you film a movie of the Cimmerillion, you have to be like 80 to watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's too violent. And you know what? I always think about. Let's talk about Mathros here. Uh,
Hmm.
when I first time read through this, I um I put things together about Mathros. You remember when Fëanor burned the ship, but burned the ships, and Mathros was like, no, 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 let's not burn the
A good
ship. And
idea.
everyone everyone else around him were already deciding to do that. And
Mm.
this time, in this fifth battle, he was betrayed by, he thought he has a lot of he thought he had
Friends.
a lot of allies and a lot of friends on the battlefield, but he was betrayed, and he was like, he probably was like, what the hell, I thought we were friends, and
Mm.
you are now attacking us.
Yeah.
And there was a time in the third king slaying, I forgot,
Mhm.
maybe some of the versions, in some versions, like in the third Kingslayer, Mithras, Mithras and Maglor attacked the, they attacked the heavens, right, and
Yeah.
with their people, and but the elves were so devastating, and even the people of Mithras and Maglor started to attack back, attack to Mithras himself. You remember that? Do
Yeah.
you do you remember that?
The,
Yeah. So
the
I
thing.
put. these three things together, and I just think, I just thought, Mithras had been in so much times this kind of situation where he thought he has had a lot of friends, he thought he has a lot of allies, but they started to attacking him.
I think the thing
Yeah.
with him is that um, he's a creature who suffers endless betrayal.
Yes.
He,
Yes.
but the trouble is, um, there's like I remember in the early 2000s, I played a game called Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2. I don't know if you know it. In
Mm-hmm.
there, there's a character called Kreia. She says she complains that she was betrayed endlessly, and she was. And she says there must always be someone who has been betrayed and betrays in turn, and who carries the knowledge of betrayal. And she's talking about a mantle of hers, but she she then complains that um, uh, she didn't initially choose betrayal. It was others who chose to betray her. But since then, she just betrays and betrays and betrays. Now, in that game, you get options for dialogue and whatnot. And if you say, "Well, I won't do that to you," she says, "You should." And like, why wouldn't you? Well, I don't want to. And her reaction, because she's an old woman, she's like, "Well, you're an idiot." But thank you. Like she melts a little and she says, "But thank you." And Mathros is like that. The betrayals that keep coming at him. When I read it, I thought eventually he got so accustomed to it, he then decided he wasn't going to be betrayed. He would betray. Like, I'm not going to let them, uh, like, I'm not going to let them drive me down. I'm going to drive them down. He became convinced he had no friends or allies, only enemies, except for his family. But I also got the impression that Karufin and Kelagorn got to work on him. Like, well,
Mm-hmm.
we tried it your way and it failed, as always. Why don't you try it our way? And I kind of
Mm-hmm.
got the impression they were like I kind of imagined them being the ones to push him, like, come on, no.
You mean the second Kingsley?
Yeah, and they were the
Yeah.
ones pushing for the
Yeah.
slaughter and
Yeah.
Doriath.
Yeah. Yeah. True. True. True.
And Mathros, so that Mathros is an agent of his own will, but also becomes more of an agent of this curse that has woven around him. But the
Yep.
problem is, it is because of his decision to swear the oath of Feanor. And
Mm-hmm.
this oath is what causes these betrayals. So that I kind of imagined him as uh, being manipulated into this and pushed into this, but also it's partly also his own decision making, which is broken, which has led him down this path. But that
Mm-hmm.
on some level, when Maglor insists that they take in Elros and Elrond, Mathros, there's the echoes of the good man he was. Mathros desires to be like that again. So that for all that he's done evil, he cannot kill these children.
Mm-hmm.
He has to take them in. And this fundamentally changes his fate. I think he's probably bound for the for the halls in Mandos's realm, but I don't think he'd probably have to wait as long as his father, considering I'd argue Feanor did a lot more wickedness than Mathros in some ways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I also kind of regard the curse, this oath, as almost the will of Feanor,
Mm-hmm.
and that's something that it's like it's almost like the spirit of Feanor living on and pushing, like grabbing my summerals, get them,
Yeah.
and you know, and this is almost irresistible. Not that I think that there is a physical ghost doing that. No, I just mean
Mm-hmm.
it kind of it's like his will, his desire for them lives on through this curse,
Mm-hmm.
and this is this is where the Feanorians run into trouble because some of them don't really want this, but they have to. They're bound by their curse, and they made the decision. We are all authors of our own fates, as one British historian once said.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, this is a very very gory, graphic scene.
Yeah.
Um, for all the people who say, well, Tolkien's not very dark, it's all good guys versus bad guys, and good guys always come home. No. Um, that's been an accusation that's been popular in recent years, and it's just no. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Actually, that's a problem with modern fantasy. They don't have this sort of stuff in it, or this sort of wise approach to writing that Tolkien had. And of course, we get the prophecy by uh, Huor, um, that a new star shall rise. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that the lines of Turgon and Huor will combine, and from there a new star shall rise. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
this is clearly a reference to, you know,
Arundel.
Eowyn, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, who will literally become a star.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, which, now that I think about it, it's also, uh, it reminds me of a Shakespeare line, where Henry IV tells his son when he's angry with him, like, what is it? Like a comet I was, that men would look on me and say, would look on me and tell their sons, this is he. And, that's kind of, I think, the idea with Earendel. Like a comet he is. Um, and of course, we get the rear guard action where um, the forces of Morgoth throw themselves forward against the last stand of the men of Darloman, and who take up the rear guard to cover for the Gondolindrim and other Eldar's retreat from the field.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where, yeah, like, so the rear guard's always the most dangerous place to be in a military battle, because could end badly for you. And but on the other hand, there's a lot of songs and stories about whoever takes up the rear guard. Uh, to any listeners, do pick up Romance of the Three Kingdoms. You'll see a lot of that. There,
Yeah.
Zhang Fei, and Guan Yu, and uh, uh, well, and a bunch of other characters always take up the rear guard. They compete for it because they want the glory. But part of this is that they're showing their loyalty to Liu Bei, because they're
Mm-hmm.
trying to show, I'm loyal, I'm willing to die for you. And in traditional, like in traditional literature and whatnot, the idea is to aspire to such nobility as the goal. Men must aspire higher than what they are. Um, this is the idea here. And of course, you also get such heroics in the Iliad. Um, and in Roland, which I've been reading, the Chanson de Roland, where Roland takes up the rear guard. And of course, this is very much derived from that scene where Roland is cutting down apart his enemies, and pretty much telling them, you will not claim Charlemagne, you will not claim my lord, my uncle, and whatnot. It's very glorious. And of course, Hurin fights till they drop, not till he drops, till they drop, and he's, he swipes up an axe uh,
Mm-hmm.
from a troll guard of Gothmog until the axe withers, falls apart, and each time that he slew, Hurin cried, "Aure Antaluva, day shall come again." Wow, that's a great battle cry.
Mm-hmm.
The day shall come again.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, he screams this out 70 times, which means he slaughtered 70 people with that
Yeah.
axe. Um, there's a great piece of art about that scene, and I couldn't find it. I'll find it as the thumbnail, just because I really, 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 really like this scene.
This
I,
image, right?
yeah, but I also love this scene, just of Hurin going, "Ale Antaluva."
Mm-hmm.
Um,
They shall come again.
Mm, I think
Is
it's
it
my
an echo? Is it an echo for the last sentence? Right. The is it a? Let's see.
earlier.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
From earlier, the night is passing.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's that Hurin is realizing the night has not passed.
Mm-hmm.
But this is also a warning to Morgoth: the day shall come again. Like you're not going to win.
Yeah.
So it's a defiant cry,
Mm-hmm.
and it really encapsulates his character and
Yes.
shows at his core he's a fighter. He
Mm-hmm.
doesn't. He's not going to just give up, give in. He's going to keep fighting and keep fighting and keep fighting. Um, he's there's a similar uh, scene where let me see, where was it? Um, uh, I think it was in right, Dynasty Warriors 7, which is an adaptation of Romance of the Three Kingdoms. It's the best adaptation, I think. It's a great video game, but I've not played in 10 years, I think. And in there, I think it's Shaho Duin, I hope I pronounced that right, tells Cao Cao at one point when Cao Cao's dying and Shaho Duin's about to plunge into a battle. He says, "I will give you a glimpse of your dream for just one
Mm-hmm.
moment. So watch me. I will, and like keep your eyes on me." And he charges and he starts slaughtering his enemies. And this is, I find it's a similar spirit. It's like, I shall give you a glimpse of your dream. Like it's defiance, and made into a man in a way. Because Shao Duin in there is very defiant. He's defiant of everyone. He's very angry. Well, I don't know if you've read Romance of the Three Kingdoms, but he's a very angry guy. And
Mm-hmm. True.
um, in the game, though, they give him a few more scenes, I think, where he's just disdainful of his enemies. He's very defiant, like Lu Bu, like smack talks him and is like loosen these ropes, dog. When he's bound in ropes, and you just have Shao doing. They're perfect. They're perfect for a. They're perfectly fine for you. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
he calls them something like. Wait, they're perfect for a wild animal, and pushes him onto his knees. Uh, it's that Shahuduin is very defiant and brave and very masculine, but there's a dangerous side to him.
Mm-hmm.
Like even Cao Cao seems to be like, okay, I treat that guy with care. Like he might be my cousin. We might be like brothers, but I'm going to be very careful for what I say to him because he might just turn around and chop my head off.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is the idea with Hurin. He's someone who's at his core very dangerous. He's a good man, but not a safe man. And this is
Mm-hmm.
always the idea with Tolkien and Lewis. They did not perceive good man as weak, like a lot of modern people think. They perceived good man as dangerous, bad man is safe and thus weak. And so there's an inversion of how a lot of modern people think. And when you go to put this into literature, at least I've been finding that with my web novels on Substack and on uh, Royal Road, is that people are always surprised when you invert it and you show the bad man as safe, but the good man as dangerous. They're always surprised by that because they're not familiar with this sort of literature and whatnot. Well, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of them are, but not all of them. And there's a philosophy here that you can see in Lewis, in Tolkien, and even if ever you read Conan the Cimmerian, he is very dangerous. And um, such as in the scene when he's told, the battle is lost, sire. Your armies are destroyed. You should go and beg and surrender. Conan's reaction is to just, he gets so angry. He says, "Give me that quiver." He takes the quiver, he takes the arrows, and he just says, and the bow, and he says, his squire then says, "But sire, uh, men of royal blood would sue for peace and for ransom. How can you comport yourself this way? I am not of royal blood. I am the son of a blacksmith. Away with you before I kill you." and proceeds to start firing on the enemy because he's dangerous. He's a good man. Like every woman in the story, when they say, "Listen, I have a problem. Can you help?" He immediately says, "Okay," but he's dangerous. If you get in his
Mm-hmm.
way, if you anger him, he might just turn around and swing his sword or his axe, and that's the idea. Uh, but yeah, the thing is, though, this is a massive triumph. Arguably, this is the battle that seals and clinches the first stage for Morgoth. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
this was the chance the heroes had to turn the tide, to win a decisive victory and keep him bound up in Angband. And it fails. It really does fail completely, utterly, and totally.
Yeah.
And after this, there's no winning. They've lost. They might slow them for a day, but they were not going to win. There's not going to be any victory until probably the death of Glaurung, and then there's not going to be any victories till the War of
Mm-hmm.
Wrath.
Yeah.
And and the thing is, Morgoth, um, pushes so much forward that Doriath and Nargothrond remain, but like many start fleeing to take refuge with Círdan because they have
Mm-hmm.
to. And of course, you've got Círdan who starts sending out ships to assail, and annoy Morgoth's forces, but he can only do so for so long. And there's attempts to send for aid, um, but one of the main guys we have to take note of who survives is Varonway, which I love that name. I'm sorry, there's just something about the sound of it, Varonway.
Mm-hmm.
I love that name, Varonway. Um, he ends up shipwrecked and happening upon Turgon. No, he ends up happening upon Tuor. I mean, Tuor, and it's going to be Varonway and Tuor who um, act as messengers on behalf of Ulmo to
Yes.
Gondwan.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we then get one of the biggest misfortunes for the Noldor is that now I may have criticized Fingon, but um, as a king, he did try learning. He wasn't. He did have some brains,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, okay, like he mostly deferred to Mathros, but how do I put it? Um, I'm going to use two examples from history again. Sorry, I'm a historian. I have to.
It's okay.
One
Go on.
is the first Roman emperor, Augustus Caesar. He was pretty good as a general, but not great. So when he had a problem militarily, he would call upon his sworn brother,
Mm-hmm.
Agrippa, and he'd say, "Win me the battle." And Agrippa is someone who pretty much never ever lost a battle and was the greatest architect and um, and just the finest general and admiral of the time. Now Agrippa would go out and well, he lost one battle actually. Now that I think about it, but that was due to a storm ravaging his fleet, and not much you can do after that. But Agrippa would always win for him. Now, Augustus was a genius and was the greatest ruler in Roman history and the greatest ruler in European history up until Charlemagne. So, he wasn't stupid. He's like, okay, I can't be an expert at everything. I have a guy who's an expert in military history and as
Mm-hmm.
a general. I'm going to turn to him and tell him, win me the battle. And Agrippa would then get free command, total command, and would devise a strategy. And some of them
Mm-hmm.
were brilliant as you can ever imagine, as brilliant as Julius Caesar's tactics and whatnot. Some of them more brilliant. In Chinese history, we have the Battle of the Red Cliffs, where
Mm-hmm.
Chu Bu, I believe. Um, no, I don't think that's it. But the Red Cliffs, where Sun Quan, who was a very bad general, Augustus was at least somewhat decent. Sun Quan was terrible at this. Now he had two older brothers. Well, he had his older brother and his father who were brilliant, but he was an idiot in war. But he was a good administrator and a good politician. So,
Mm-hmm.
he turns to his brother's best friend and says, "Win me the battle," which he then does against the almost completely unconquerable Cao Cao, who was in a lot of ways the Julius Caesar of Chinese history. So, you know, uh, Fingon turning to Maethros and saying, "Win me this battle," makes sense to me. It's not Maethros' fault he lost a battle. It's to an extent Fingon's because got a little impulsive there. But on the other hand, we can say Morgoth had his Easterlings. But I don't know how Turgon can look at this battle, at this disaster, and say, "Yeah, we're good." What? Yeah, like we could just sit here in Gondolin and we're good. We're fine. It,
Mm-hmm.
it,
It
but
won't make sense, right?
yeah, it's just. But the trouble is, I want to say it's unrealistic, but when I study history, I've seen this sort of reaction happen with some leaders where it's like, "Oh yeah, we're fine." What? Or like, like, what is it? You have like they enter this weird state of denial where it's like, "Oh, we're fine."
Yeah.
No, the barbarians are at the gates. Everything is lost. In particular, what is it? Around 406, Rome is surrounded. Barbarians have
Mm-hmm.
crept every part of the Roman Empire in the West.
Mm-hmm.
What does the emperor do?
Yeah.
Well, I guess I should host a party and
Just
like ignore it.
just chill out. Just kick back.
Yeah, and he
No, no,
spends.
because maybe because for Togon it's too much. It's too much. It's like a great. It's like the greatest disappear.
Hmm,
Um.
but he
Mhm.
just, yeah, he just ends up
Re-
completely.
retreating, retreating to Gondolin, right?
Yeah, I guess that's why it's like I say. Well, I tend to say to a lot of friends, well, your character, because like I write a lot of how to write stuff. It's like your character could be a bad king, but he's not Turgon bad. Like where it's like, and they're like, wait, hold on. And I know a lot of Tolkien tubers who are like, no, come on, he's not that bad. No, he is worse than that. Like I know in Game of Thrones, they're like, oh, Joffrey Lannister. No, he doesn't do as badly as Turgon. Turgon is like, okay, you've got on one end Aragorn, who's like the greatest. Then you got Turgon, who's the worst. You've got this like litmus test. And I just find Turgon is the worst. He's not evil, but he's just so.
Mhm.
Uh,
He was so bad at ruling.
yeah, he just
Yeah.
ignores. He ignores Idril, for one thing, who has a brain. And he ignores his daughter, who's telling him, my cousin's checking me out. This is weird. I don't think we should trust Megalyn. That's
Mm-hmm.
fine. It's like, Morgoth's at the gates. You have to abandon Gondolin. Why? I mean, we did so well in the Nirnaeth Arnodiad. Okay. It's like he's just not seeing it. So I think I might actually be unpopular here, but I'll say the elves may have been able to recover from the Nirnaeth Arnodiad, but what they could not recover from is Turgon being High King of the Noldor.
Mm-hmm.
There is no recovering from that. When
Mm-hmm.
you crown someone like Turgon, there is no recovery. There is total defeat. This is the worst calamity to ever hit the elves. This is when they start to decline.
Yeah.
Fingon was not the decline. Fingon messed up, okay, but operate like you can kind of understand. You know what I mean? What he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Maethros, you can understand. Like Maethros is brilliant, but Turgon makes every wrong call at every turn. And he's just intent on bad decision making. And like
Mm-hmm.
there's a reason uh some of the like let me think. What was his name? You have for one thing, uh the worst king in French history was a guy called Jean d'Ur, or John II. He was the second king to bear the name John or Jean. And he just led to one defeat after another. Then, when one of his sons was captured by the English, the son slipped away and came back to France. And what Jean then did was, well, my son was not supposed to escape. I will now go to the English and surrender myself and the crown to them. No, like, you're hostage. You could not fight a war because you're hostage. They held a hostage, so you
Mm-hmm.
surrender yourself to them. What are you doing? You have, and no, his sons were like, wait, what the hell are you doing, Dad? We don't have. They have no leverage. Well, see, I'm going to go surrender. It's the right thing to do. What are you
Mm-hmm.
doing? So the French, since then, have just kind of looked at this figure and said, what was he thinking? Well, we know now he was an idiot, but at the time, the French were confused and bewildered, and this demoralized them. And the English, of course, were shocked because why would you surrender? What? So they then said, well, like we know from the historical record, the English should ask him, why'd you surrender? I want to come here and party. I was captured once. I like the parties. He just wanted to come and party in London. He didn't, because in Paris he had all these responsibilities. He had to be king and whatnot. What? It's so much more fun when you're just going to go enjoy an orgy and a party.
Mm-hmm.
And the English were just like, well, I guess we're hosting a party now. But meanwhile the French were just angry and hated him, and so his son starts to usurp the throne and starts bringing more military experts in and retaking the kingdom because most of it was conquered, and you got to retake that back. But Turgon is like Jean d'Ur. It's just one bad decision after another, and he's intent on it. There's no. I think you can compare him to Shumayan. I think it is the first emperor of Wu, not the first emperor of Jin. I mean, after Shuma Zhao, after the Three Kingdoms period. Just one bad decision after another, just incapable of good decision making. But yeah, so that's enough of me hating on poor Turgon. He does do one good decision that I do agree of and I do approve. He marries Idril to Tuor.
Mm-hmm.
For
Yeah.
that alone, we should forgive him on some level because that gives us Earendel. That gives us the greatest hero of the first age.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He was an easy father-in-law.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Compared to those two.
yeah. He was a good father-in-law in comparison to everyone else. I mean,
Yeah.
Thingol, go fetch me a Silmaril. That's a death sentence. Yeah, go do it. Elrond, yeah, I think of you as my son, Aragorn. Now, can you go reestablish Arnor and Gondor and defeat Sauron?
Yeah, be the king of men.
It's
Yeah.
like, wait, hold on, time out. That's
Easy
very,
job. It's a very easy job for you. I trust you. Go do it.
yeah, like, well, at least we could say that the women are somewhat a little more reasonable than say Zenobia over in Howard's story, who says, I love you, Conan, but I need you to conquer this kingdom and liberate me. And when Conan has lost his throne, his armies lost everything, and he has to go basically secure a Silmaril, and then uh, liberate the king, and then liberate his kingdom, and then save her. Yeah, against a Sauron type character, it's like, yeah, how is he going to do this one? Like these impossible to accomplish things are always fun to read about. But these father-in-laws, they really don't go easy on their son-in-laws. Well, at least we could say both Thingol and Turgon were friendly with them afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting that Tolkien does show father-in-laws generally being friendly with their son-in-laws for the most part. Like after the initial big quest, they're usually on friendly terms with them and whatnot. Although with Elrond, I'll never forget the meme of when your daughter is 3,999 years old and she's finally moving out of the house. It's like, yeah, okay, well done, well played, Tolkien, well played. For that alone, I'll actually forgive Peter Jackson a lot because that's a great meme. But any thoughts on the Nirnaya Farnodiad?
You mean the general idea?
Yeah, like what are your thoughts on this battle?
There is a very interesting point I want to point out.
Hmm.
Um, we read this because the historian wrote this stuff. So I think the title of this battle is the name of this battle is very interesting. It's
Hmm.
called
Battle of
the
Unnumbered
the
Tears.
unnumbered the battle of unnumbered tears, right? Because it's an echo from for the what Mendel said in the previous episodes. And I think there must be a moment where you know the elves and the men, when they were fighting in this battle, they won't call it, they won't name it because they were fighting in the battlefield. They must name it when they wrote history.
Mm.
So there must be a moment where they were like, oh, so that what Mendel's mean. That what that is, this is what is called the unnumbered tears. So they
Mm.
decided to name this battle after what Mendel said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's there's also an echo to what Feanor says, about shedding tears into the sea.
True, sure.
He's
Yeah,
like, are we just going to
true.
be doing that over here? No, Feanor, you're going to be doing that over there.
Yeah.
He had it backwards. You're not doing it over here. You're going to be doing it over there, over
Yeah.
in Middle Earth. But uh, Tolkien does put in these echoes, these continuous moments of
Mm-hmm.
um, where there's callbacks and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
You call forwards because when you think of Lord of the Rings in the Third Age and whatnot,
Yeah.
which was technically completed in terms of the story structure and whatnot before this one, because
Mm-hmm.
Tolkien wrote like George Lucas. The Third Age, then he writes uh, he pretty much writes the second and first, like George Lucas, it's 4, 5, and 6, and then 1, 2, 3, and whatnot. I guess because all talented authors are not mathematicians. Um, I'm joking. But maybe they could stand to learn a thing or two from the Chinese and Japanese about math. Because I believe the best mathematicians are from there in Germany in recent decades. But yeah, so this is a battle which um, it also I think has echoes to Fingolfin because he bangs on the doors to Angband
Mm-hmm.
just as Gwindor does. But where
Mm-hmm.
Fingolfin, it's I would argue a glorious moment because he in the end win. He loses, but he also wins in a way because he manages to maim Morgoth.
Mm-hmm.
Gwindor accomplishes nothing,
Yeah.
and except his own
He was
capture.
captured, right? He was
Mm.
captured. Mm-hmm.
And I think it made me wonder when I first read it if maybe capturing Fingolfin was partially the goal uh,
Yeah,
with the battle
maybe.
between
Yeah,
him
maybe. You're
and.
right. Mm-hmm.
But he did try to. I think like when he smashes his he smashes Gron, lava
Mm-hmm.
ensues. But I always kind of imagined him as almost trying to corner Fingolfin, so he could just grab and carry him into Angband. Because imagine the prize of capturing Fingolfin.
Mm-hmm.
But Fingolfin's not to be captured. He's not going to let himself. But that's where I think, in my thinking, I guess I saw the battles progressive, where as it's progressing, Morgoth is realizing, nope, can't do that. I'm gonna have to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where with Gwindor, there's the decision. Okay, him I can capture, him I can use, him I
Mm-hmm.
can torment, and he also captures Hurin, whom he knows where uh, Gondolin is, and that's not gonna go well. And we have to also ask ourselves Where was Doriath when everyone else was falling?
You know, there were two elves from Doriath
uh,
helping, right?
yeah, I know.
I
That
believe
was a that was
they
a
are
reference
uh,
to
who? They are Balak and Mablon, right? Okay.
mhm, yeah,
No one out of like Doriath save
yeah.
Mablon and Balak. Okay.
And Ecthelion
Mhm.
was also there.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
he's from Gondolin. But yeah, Good Eye Mablung is going to play a larger role in the Children of Hurin. Um, very important character. But my joke there was in reference to a meme about where was Gondor
There
when
was like where
yeah,
was the well west of
yeah,
west? Yeah,
yeah. And it's like, well, yeah, well, where was Doriath when everyone else fell?
yeah,
Um, and it is a when everyone else fell
yeah.
because almost literally everyone else falls in one
Mm-hmm,
fell swoop
mm-hmm,
like that, except Nargothrond, which is depleted now because they did pour a lot into this battle, and then they're going to pour even more into the next one because
mm-hmm.
Turin's an idiot, and Doriath ends up cornered, and you can kind of see from a strategic perspective, Battle of Unnumbered Tears. Okay, now Morgoth is working on Dorloman. He's got the Feanorian holdings now to reach for Nargothrond. So he's basically doing this almost towards Doriath. He's kind
Mm-hmm.
of surrounding it, and there's not much. Like the problem is when Nargothrond falls, that leaves Doriath isolated,
Yes.
and that's where whether they know it or not, the Feanorians pouring in to slaughter is the best thing for Morgoth because it destroys Doriath and allows him to just bulldoze over that
Yeah,
to
yeah,
where
yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
I would argue after the Battle of Unnumbered Tears, using the Feanorians like that was always his plan. And
Yes, there's a very interesting theory that the Morgoth like intentionally let he intentionally let Luthien take away the Silmaril among the elves so that Silmaril can
I don't.
create,
Oh,
yeah,
sorry. I should
so
let you.
so that the Silmaril will create more chaos among the elves. So
I
that was Morgoth's plan. That was a theory.
I don't. That's not my
Mhm.
theory. My theory is he let the Feanorians live.
Okay,
So
okay, that makes
like
sense too.
he doesn't give chase. He did not plan for that summer realm to fall out of his grasp. That
Morgoth Morgoth knew that um the
he
more
can't get.
Fëanorians, the more chaos.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
he can't get the summer realm back. Um, I would theorize he knows the Feanorians know where it is. He cannot gain access, neither can they due to Melian. But the
Yeah.
idea is to torment Turin and use him in such a manner to create chaos,
Yeah.
and that gets him Nagelfrond. But the idea is, well, okay, I need to wait now, hunker down, and try to get rid of Turin to also torment Hurin because he's a sadist. But
Mm-hmm.
it's also about driving a wedge between everyone. And
Mm-hmm.
then,
Yeah.
like if he can somehow get basically torment and kill Turin, he could use to he captured Turin at one point. He wanted to use him against Thingol because this is basically Thingol's foster son. So he's a kind of son to Thingol. We
Mm-hmm.
use that to weaken or kill Thingol. Then after Thingol's dead, Melian's gone. That
Mm-hmm.
leaves Doriath open. That
Mm-hmm.
leaves the path open. But he knows that they'll expect him to charge forward. What the Feanorians are is a sideways assault. Like you don't assault from the front, you assault from the side. So he's
Mm-hmm.
attacking them from one side.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the notion I had. He's using the Feanorians, though they don't know it, as a backup army to
Yeah,
attack.
yeah, yeah. Because it's kind of old way of his. It's kind of old way of uh Morgoth, where he manipulated Fëanor as well. Maybe it was all his plan from the beginning
Well,
to manipulate all of them.
I don't know. I think that would diminish his intellect in a way. In that I don't.
Mhm,
Well, maybe I think it's that he, like Feanor, he doesn't fully plan everything on. I think he plans. How do I put it? Uh, he obviously didn't plan Fingolfin. That didn't go well. He
yeah.
didn't plan Baron and Luthien. That didn't go well either. But I think, like there's the reaction. Okay, I lost to Silmaril. Okay, the elves are gathering for one big battle. I need to slip the Easterlings in. Okay, I need to do this. He's reacting. He's thinking on the spot, and he's going, okay, how can I change the situation?
Mm-hmm.
Like he's there's an old thing like, all right, here's the map of everything. Turn the map around. Like look at it from a different angle. Look at it in a different manner to arrive at a different conclusion. And I think Morgoth's doing that. He's
Mm-hmm.
reacting, but not in a negative way. Like he's reacting like, okay, the enemies are planning this. Okay, how can I turn this around? Okay, I'll do that. And I'll do this, this, and this. Okay, I'll do that. And he's shifting his thinking. Okay. So he can't get into Doriath. No problem. The Feanorians can. I'll push them back. I'll create the situation. All right, the dwarves killed Thingol. Good. The Silmaril is now open. It's, everybody's going to want it. Okay, I wait.
Mm-hmm.
Feanorians go in. No more Doriath. All right, I bulldoze over the region, pushing the Feanorians back. All right, the Havens. Like I don't have to deal with that. I'll just mop up elves over here, over here, over here, mop up the humans over here, here. While the Feanorians are driven further and further, they'll go for the Silmaril. So he's using them without them realizing like an advanced army. While
I
he's mopping this up, mopping that up, he's something
he was very, you know,
adaptive.
yes.
Like I think that this is ultimately like this is something which, because I've been studying Charlemagne a little lately, the greatest ruler in European history and in French history. And what he would do is, like a battle wouldn't go his way. Uh, in the midst of it, he'd adapt. Like he'd change stratagem, or oh, his enemies are in Italy. Like it's hard to penetrate Italy if you don't have a navy. So what he did was, all right, they're guarding the Western Front. He sent an
Mm-hmm.
army all the way around to the eastern uh, part of the Alps and went around. They were expecting him to go through the Alps. Oh, that's the dog. And he was expecting. They were thinking he'd do something like cross the Alps, like Hannibal Barca once did, or come in from the Western. He sent someone around the entire, almost a chunk of Europe, just to come in from the east. Then they're going, wait, they're coming from the east, so they start moving there. He then comes in from the west, pincering them. So he adapted his plan to what they were going to do. And
Mm-hmm.
this is as much a part of acting as reacting. So
Mm-hmm.
they guarded the Western Front. Okay, I'll go around them. Okay, they're now aware I'm coming in from the east. I'm not going to hit them from the west. And he did this a lot. Okay, so the enemy is attacking my convents and monasteries in one military campaign's case. I'll chop down their sacred tree. Like they're attacking our
Mm-hmm.
nuns and monks, chop down their tree, burn it in front of them. That
Mm-hmm.
demoralizes them. That was his reaction to them. And, then he advances further. So it's like Cao Cao with many of his military campaigns.
Yeah.
It's as much a reaction as is an action. And Morgoth is like that.
Mm-hmm.
He's quite brilliant that way.
In a
And
way. Mm.
well, in many ways, he's brilliant. The problem is he's evil and psychotic. Actually, I think he might be the most evil villain I've ever seen in fiction. So,
Yeah,
um,
he is evil, right?
sure.
He is the birth of evil.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that sentence, "birth of evil,"
Yeah.
and because he does taint the world with turning it into his ring.
Yeah.
In a way. Yeah. So, anyways, I don't have much more to add on this one. and I've taken up too much of your time. I'll just comment though on that poster. I think it is behind you, the
What?
Feanorians. I think
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's not a post. It's a soft fabric. Look,
it's a
it's
tapestry.
yeah. It's
Ooh,
from one of my favorite artists. Maybe I can send her homepage. Yeah, it's
sure,
from yeah.
that's
It's very
amazing.
cute. It's the cute version of them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I see them all over your Instagram and your Twitter account. Which actually I'll link to in the comment section, not the description. I've noticed YouTube. Um, well, the thing is, if you put things in the description, it doesn't do well in the algorithm. I've
Oh,
been
okay.
learning. So
Okay.
I'm going to put it in the comment section and pin it so that people can see it.
Great.
And this way they can follow Eleanor Zhang over on Instagram and see all the stuff you're doing there because you're one of the most rabid Tolkien fans, I think, over there. Um,
Devoting. Devoted.
devotees.
Yeah.
Okay. Tolkien devotees. That makes it sound like a priestess. Um,
So
but
weird.
um, as for myself, I'll just put maybe my Royal Road um, link and the crowdfund I'm going to be helping out with, as I'm now an editor and I'm helping edit a fantasy novel, well, fantasy anthology, I should say, of disconnected stories. So it's called the Steel Hearts Anthology, and it's primarily restricted to uh, the North American region, but people from outside can download the ebook if they, you can. We'll make it that available, and that'll be something that will eventually, probably in the next week or two, be linked to because I'll be publishing that on Drafted Digital. So, yeah, um, I'm doing a crowdfund for that, and you can find my own books over on Royal Road, such as the Onomachi, which is my Silmarillion, or my first attempt at one. Um, so until next time, take care, everyone, and um, uh, maybe try avoiding battles where people chop people into pieces. It's not a good sign when people do that. But don't forget to also like and subscribe and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
Bye.